She was invisible to them. Just another brown hand wiping down marble counters. Just another quiet woman in a gray uniform nobody looked at twice. But invisibility has power. And the day she heard them whispering about the poison, the day she stood between a powerful man and his death, everything changed. Not just for him. For her. If you've ever been overlooked, talked past, treated like you don't exist just because of the color of your skin or the title on your badge, this story is yours. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you're new here, and stay with me because this one will have you screaming at your screen. Her name was Nadia Hassan. 29 years old, Sudanese, born in Khartoum, raised in Atlanta after her mother brought her and her two younger brothers across the ocean with 2 suitcases and a prayer. She had the kind of beauty that people tried to ignore: high cheekbones, deep brown skin that caught light like polished mahogany, eyes so dark they looked like they held entire universes behind them. But in this city, in this building, she was nobody. She was the Maid. And at CO Grand Tower, the most exclusive private residence complex in the city, 40 floors of glass and silence and old money, maids were less than furniture. At least furniture got admired. Nadia had worked there for 2 years, 2 years of scrubbing, folding, disappearing into walls when wealthy tenants walked past, 2 years of don't make eye contact, 2 years of being talked over, around, and through. She needed the job. Her mother's dialysis treatments weren't cheap. Her youngest brother was 2 semesters from graduating college. She swallowed her pride every single morning with her coffee and walked through those service entrance doors like she was walking into battle. Because it was battle. The head housekeeper, a thin woman named Sandra with a pinched face and a clipboard she treated like a weapon, had made it her personal mission to make Nadia's life difficult. Hassan, she never said the full name, just snapped it like a rubber band. The 42nd floor hasn't been touched yet, move. I finished the 40th and 41st ahead of schedule. I didn't ask for your schedule, I asked for results, move. Nadia moved. She always moved, because losing this job wasn't an option. The 42nd floor was different from the others. It had its own elevator, its own security panel. You needed a special keycard just to get the doors to open, and the housekeeping team was only allowed in during a specific 2-hour window every morning while the primary resident was in meetings downstairs. The primary resident of the 42nd floor. Seo Jinho. Nadia had never seen him in person. She'd heard things though, everybody heard things about Seo Jinho. That he was 34 and had built a business empire that nobody could fully explain: import, export, private security, real estate. That he never raised his voice. That when he smiled, people got nervous instead of comfortable. That men in very expensive suits crossed entire rooms just to bow their heads to him. The other maids whispered about him in the break room. "He's terrifying," one girl said. "I accidentally bumped into him in the hall once. He just looked at me, that's it, just looked. I couldn't sleep for 3 days. He tipped me once," another said. $500 cash in an envelope, no note, nothing, just left it on the counter. "My cousin's boyfriend says he's not just a businessman," a third one whispered, her voice dropping low. "Says the whole 42nd floor is basically a war room, says people who cross him don't get second chances." Nadia had listened, said nothing, and gone back to work. She didn't care about powerful men and their reputations. Powerful men had never done a thing for her. But that Tuesday morning, everything shifted. She came in through the service entrance at 6:45, same as always, collected her cart, rode the restricted elevator to 42, swiped her keycard. The doors slid open with that soft, expensive hiss. The apartment, if you could even call it that, was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows facing the skyline, furniture in black and deep charcoal, no clutter, no warmth. It felt like walking into the inside of someone's mind, controlled, deliberate, cold in a way that made you hold yourself tighter. Nadia worked fast and quiet. She'd learned the rhythm of this floor: start with the main corridor, move to the east sitting room, then the private office, only the outer section, never the desk, then the dining area and kitchen. She was in the dining area when she heard them. Voices coming from the private corridor that connected to the secondary conference room. She froze. The window was supposed to be clear. No staff, no residents, no guests, that was the arrangement. She wasn't supposed to be hearing voices at all. She should have packed her cart and left, that would have been the smart thing, the safe thing. The one word stopped her cold. Poison. I already sourced it, colorless, no taste. Coroner won't flag it unless they're specifically looking, and they won't be looking. A pause, then another voice, smoother, more careful. And you're certain it won't trace back to us? It'll look like a cardiac event. He's had stress markers for months. The doctors already have that in his file. We made sure of that. 1 cup of coffee and it's done. The entire board votes by Friday. Without him at the table, the vote passes. We take controlling interest. Everything he built becomes ours. Silence. Then do it Wednesday. He always takes his coffee alone before the 9 o'clock. Nadia's whole body had stopped working. She wasn't breathing, she wasn't moving. Her hand was gripping her cart so hard she could feel her pulse in her knuckles. They were going to kill him. They were going to kill Seo Jinho. Wednesday morning, his coffee before 9. She waited until she heard the voices move away, waited until the corridor went completely silent. Then she exhaled one long, shaking breath and made herself finish her work, made herself move normal, made herself not run. Because if they saw her run, she was dead too. She spent all of Tuesday night staring at the ceiling of her apartment. She could go to the police and say what? That she overheard a conversation in a hallway. She had no names, no evidence. And she was a black maid with a Sudanese name trying to report a murder plot against a powerful man to a system that had never once looked out for her. They'd dismiss her before she finished the first sentence. She could leave an anonymous tip somewhere. But how? She didn't know anyone connected to Seo Jinho. She wasn't supposed to know he existed beyond his floor number and his 2-hour window. She could do nothing, walk away, pretend she never heard it. Her mother's face flashed in her mind. Her brother's graduation photo on the refrigerator. Then she thought about a man drinking his morning coffee. Not knowing. She closed her eyes. I can't do nothing, I can't. Wednesday morning, she was there at 6:30, earlier than her window, early enough to make Sandra raise an eyebrow. You're not on the 42nd floor today, Hassan, you're on 38 and 39. I left my personal cart organizer up there yesterday, I need to grab it before I start. Sandra stared at her with those flat eyes. Nadia kept her face completely neutral, bored almost. Fine, make it quick. The elevator ride to 42 was the longest 40 seconds of her life. The floor was quiet when she got there, still, morning light pouring through the massive windows painting everything gold. She could hear her own footsteps. She went straight to the kitchen. There was already a carafe of coffee on the warmer, fresh brewed, steam rising from the top. A single white mug set beside it, positioned precisely like someone had placed it there with intention. Like a stage had been set. Nadia's stomach dropped. She stood there staring at that carafe, her hands were shaking, her mind was running through every possible outcome of what she was about to do. Then she heard the elevator doors open. He was taller than she expected. She'd built some image in her head from whispers and rumors, cold, distant, untouchable. But Seo Jinho in person was something she hadn't prepared for. He wore a dark charcoal suit, no tie, the first button of his shirt open. Sharp jaw, calm eyes, black still, the kind of still that made you think of deep water. His presence filled the room without effort, the way a storm fills the sky before the first lightning strike. He stopped when he saw her. She saw his eyes move fast, calculating to her face, her uniform, her position near his coffee station. 2 men in dark suits materialized behind him from nowhere. One of their hands moved toward their jacket. Nadia didn't flinch. She stepped slightly in front of the carafe. Don't drink that coffee, she said. Her voice was steady, she didn't know how, but it was. The air in the room changed. One of the suited men stepped forward. Who authorized? Seo Jinho raised one hand, 2 inches, that was all. The man stopped like he'd hit a wall. Those dark, still eyes stayed on Nadia. Say that again, he said, low, quiet, the kind of quiet that has weight. I overheard 2 men in your secondary conference room yesterday morning, Nadia said. I know I wasn't supposed to be there and I know this is going to sound. Say exactly what you heard. Not a request. She said it, all of it, word for word. She'd replayed it enough times in her head that it came out almost verbatim. The cardiac event, the coroner, the Friday vote, the controlling interest. The whole time, Seo Jinho didn't move, didn't blink more than necessary. His face showed nothing. When she finished, silence. Then he looked at the man to his right. Get Dr. Kwon, the carafe goes to the lab now. He looked back at Nadia. Your name? Nadia Hassan. I'm on the housekeeping staff, second year. Something moved behind his eyes, too fast for her to read. You came in early today, he said. Yes. You changed your assignment to come here. Yes. Why? She met his gaze, didn't look away. Because I couldn't let someone die if I had the power to stop it, even if it wasn't my business. The silence stretched between them like wire pulled tight. Then barely the corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, something more like recognition. Sit down, Nadia Hassan, he said. She sat. He did not call Sandra. He did not have her escorted out. He poured 2 glasses of water from a sealed bottle and set one in front of her without ceremony, then stood at the window with his back to her for exactly 30 seconds while he made a phone call in Korean. She understood none of it. But she heard the shift in his voice when he spoke, the low, controlled edge, the way the words came out like stones being placed one by one with precision. When he turned back to her, he was different, still cold, but focused on her in a way that made her feel like the entire world had narrowed to this room. You realized, he said, that you've made yourself a witness. I know. That makes you a risk. I know that too. You came anyway. I came anyway. He studied her face. She let him. There was nothing on her face she was trying to hide. Why are you still working here? He said suddenly. You're overqualified, I can see it. Nadia blinked, of all the things she'd expected him to say. My mother's medical bills, she said. My brother's tuition. I do what needs to be done. Something shifted in his expression. A door opened for 1 second and then closed again. You're Sudanese, he said. Born in Khartoum, raised in Atlanta. He nodded slowly, like this was information being filed somewhere permanent. The lab results came back in 40 minutes. Nadia was still sitting there when the man, Dr. Kwon, apparently walked in, said something in Korean, and handed Seo Jinho a tablet. His jaw tightened. That was the only outward reaction. He turned to his security lead, 3 words in Korean. The man nodded once and walked out. Nadia would later learn that those 3 words had set 17 different things in motion simultaneously. That by noon that day, every person involved in the plot, from the ones who whispered in that conference room to the ones who'd quietly manipulated the medical records to the ones who'd sourced the compound, had been located. She didn't know that yet. What she knew was that Seo Jinho turned to her, and for the first time his eyes held something that wasn't calculation. You saved my life, he said, simply like statting weather. I did what any person should do. Most people don't. She didn't have an answer for that because he was right. She thought that would be the end of it. She thought she'd give a formal statement to his people, sign something, go back to 38 and 39 and continue her life. She was wrong. By Thursday morning, Sandra called her into the office with that sharp rubber band snap of her name, and Nadia braced herself for the worst. Instead, Sandra looked like she'd swallowed something uncomfortable. Your role here is being restructured, Sandra said, not meeting her eyes. Restructured how? You've been reassigned, effective immediately, directly to Mr. Seo's floor, exclusive, new contract, new rate. Sandra pushed a folder across the desk like it burned her fingers. Nadia opened it. She kept her face still. The number on that contract was 3 times her current salary. She signed it. Sandra said nothing else, but as Nadia stood to leave, she heard the woman mutter under her breath something low and ugly about people not knowing their place. Nadia paused, turned around, looked at Sandra the way you look at something very small that has briefly forgotten how small it is. My place, Nadia said quietly, just got upgraded. You have a good day. She walked out. The next 3 weeks were strange and electric. She worked the 42nd floor exclusively now. New hours, broader access, different responsibilities that blurred the line between housekeeper and something else, something she didn't have a word for yet. Seo Jinho was almost always there. And he watched her not in a way that felt threatening, in a way that felt like cataloging, like he was memorizing something he didn't fully understand and couldn't stop trying to. He started doing this thing where he'd appear in whatever room she was working in casually, deliberately, and just be there, reading something, on a call, not speaking to her, not demanding anything, just present. One morning he left a coffee on the counter near where she worked, fresh, the good kind, in a real mug, not a paper cup. No note, no instruction. She drank it. He glanced over from across the room, and something about his shoulders eased. Neither of them said anything about it. The Friday board vote happened without him. Or rather, it happened with every single one of the conspirators missing from the table, because by Friday morning they had each separately, inexplicably, quietly decided to resign their positions and remove themselves from any interest in CO Group holdings. One of them left the country entirely. Nobody explained this publicly. Nobody needed to. "You're wondering what happened to them," Seo Jinho said one evening. He was standing at the window. The city glittered 42 floors below them. Nadia looked up from the table she was wiping. "I wasn't going to ask. But you want to know." She put down her cloth. "Are they alive?" "Yes." "That's enough for me." He turned from the window, that quiet, assessing look again. "Most people want details," he said. "I'm not most people." No, the word landed like something decided. "You are not." The space between them was doing something complicated. She could feel it. She'd been feeling it for days and doing a very clean job of ignoring it because she was professional and this was her workplace and he was. "I want to offer you something," he said. She braced. "Not like that," he said, reading her expression with infuriating accuracy. "A position, a real one. My operations here need a head of residential coordination. It's a management role. It would require discretion, attention to detail, the ability to read a room." He paused. "You already do all three better than anyone I've employed." Nadia was quiet for a moment. "You don't have to compensate me," she said. "I didn't warn you to get something." "I know," his voice shifted, softened in a way she didn't think that voice could soften. "That is precisely why I'm offering it." She said she'd think about it. She thought about it for exactly 2 days. She thought about her mother's face, her brother's graduation photo, 2 years of swallowing her pride for a job that paid just enough to keep drowning at a slower rate. She thought about Sandra's voice saying your place. She thought about a mug of coffee left on a counter with no note. She called the number he'd given her. He picked up on the second ring. "Yes," she said. A pause. "Good." Another pause, longer this time, something breathing in the silence between them. "Nadia." It was the first time he'd said her first name without her last name attached. Something about the way it came out of his mouth, quiet, almost careful, made her close her eyes for just a second. "I don't bring many people close to me," he said. "The ones I do, I don't let go of easily." She absorbed that, all its meanings, all its weight. "Is that a warning?" she asked. "It's honesty." Then honestly she took a breath. "Neither do I." She started the new position on a Monday. Her own office, 2 floors below the 42nd but connected by the private elevator she now had permanent access to, a team of 4 reporting to her, a salary her mother cried about on the phone when Nadia told her. "Baby," her mother said, her voice thick, "what happened?" "Someone finally saw me," Nadia said. Sandra, she learned through the building grapevine, had been let go, something about a pattern of discriminatory behavior finally being officially documented. Funny how that documentation materialized so thoroughly and so suddenly. Nadia didn't feel guilty about that. Not even a little. The first day she wore her new work clothes, no gray uniform, no cart, just a structured blazer and her natural hair out in full, she walked through the main lobby instead of the service entrance. The doorman who'd never acknowledged her in 2 years opened the door and said, "Good morning, Ms. Hassan." She didn't break her stride. But inside she was standing in Khartoum with her 7-year-old self and her mother's hand, hearing the word America said like a promise, like a doorway, like something waiting to be deserved. I made it, Mama, I made it my way. 3 months later, she was on the 42nd floor late, both of them working past midnight, which had become a quiet habit neither of them acknowledged. When Seo Jinho set down his phone and looked at her across the room. I keep thinking about something, he said. That's dangerous in your line of work. The corner of his mouth moved. She'd started to love that almost smile that most people never got to see and didn't know they were being trusted with. You walked into that kitchen, he said. You didn't know me. I could have had you removed for being in a restricted area. You had every reason to walk away. I know. Why didn't you? She thought about it, really thought about it. My mother used to say something, she said slowly. She said, when you see a wrong and you have the power to make it right, your silence makes you part of the wrong. She said that in a country where our silence was required of us just to survive, she said it anyway. Nadia looked at him. I heard it in her voice my whole life. I couldn't unhear it in that kitchen. The room was very still. He crossed it slowly, not quickly, not with urgency, deliberately, the way he did everything. He stopped an arm's length from her and looked at her face like he was reading something written in a language he'd spent years learning. You are remarkable, he said, low, direct, no performance in it. Don't make it weird, she said. And Seo Jinho, cold, controlled, terrifying Seo Jinho, the man whom grown men in expensive suits rearranged their posture around, laughed. A real one, full and brief, and completely unguarded. She felt it land somewhere behind her ribs and stay there. He reached out and touched her hand, just her hand, his thumb moving once over her knuckles, the lightest thing, but it landed like a whole conversation. I'm not a simple man, he said. I noticed. My world is not simple. Neither is mine. You would have to trust me. She looked at him right into those dark, still, deep-water eyes. You haven't given me a reason not to, she said. His hand wrapped around hers. Then I intend to keep it that way, he said. Later, she would try to explain it to her friend on the phone. The strange, slow, inevitable way it had happened. The coffee left on the counter. The silent presence in every room. The laugh she'd pulled out of him like pulling something buried into light. Girl, her friend said, a mafia boss is in love with you because you saved his life. I didn't do it for that. That's exactly why he's in love with you. Nadia smiled at the ceiling of her apartment. Outside, the city blazed. Inside, her phone showed a single text from an unsaved number she absolutely knew by heart now. Sleep, I'll see you in the morning. She typed back, good night, Jinho. 3 seconds later, good night, Nadia. She set the phone down. Somewhere across 42 floors of glass and silence, a man who had never been surprised by anything was lying awake thinking about a woman in a gray uniform who had walked in front of his coffee like a shield. And she knew it. And she slept like peace. So tell me something. Would you have warned him or walked away and protected yourself? Drop it in the comments, I genuinely want to know. And ladies, if a man like that claimed you the way he claimed her, slow, deliberate, completely certain, would you let him, or is that too much power in one person's hands? Because here's what I keep thinking about, Nadia didn't save him because she wanted something. She saved him because it was right, and that rightness in her is exactly what made her impossible to ignore. What's the most powerful thing someone has ever done for you without expecting anything back? Tell me below, real answers only. And if this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe because we tell these stories every week. Every single week. See you in the next one.